All right. As Rebecca said, this webinar is for TPEP Grantees. We're going to be talking about key messages and media advocacy. My name is Olivia Stone. I'm a senior director at Metropolitan Group. We're the contractor for Smokefree Oregon's communication. And wanted to start by giving an overview of the agenda so you know what to expect. We're going to be starting by walking through some tobacco prevention messaging that Smokefree Oregon uses. That includes key messages, talking points to support key messages, proof points or evidence, and then talk about localizing the message to your county a little bit. Then we'll talk through how to use those messages for effective media advocacy, looking at collaborating on a story or pitch to make it stronger, shaping your story and approach, and everyone's favorite, pitching the media via email. We'll start with that. And then we'll have some sharing and Q&A at the end. So let's start with key messages. Key messages provide audiences and priority audience groups with emotional and intellectual information about an issue so that they can understand it, engage with it, and take action. For Smokefree Oregon, the key messages that we use are as follows. The tobacco industry targets children and teens by selling fruit and candy flavored vapes and other products, and by advertising at children's eye level in stores. The tobacco industry also goes after people who have faced racism and other discrimination, people earning lower incomes, and people who are stressed or struggling. It's time for these predatory, racist, and discriminatory practices to end. We can hold the industry accountable for the harm it causes. People in Oregon have done it before, and we're continuing to fight back. Together, we're stronger than big tobacco. So in all of Smokefree Oregon's prevention-focused content and materials, we aim to hit on these four key messages. I'd love to hear if there are some key messages that you use in all of your communication with your communities, constituents in your county, and other folks that you work with. If you can pop them in the chat, that would be great. I'm sure some of them are a little bit different than these because the things that you're focusing on and the concerns of community members are different. So I would love to hear what those differences and nuances are. As you enter those into the chat, we'll move on and talk a little bit about talking points. So while key messages are single ideas that often summarize a body of evidence or information, talking points are more specific messages with additional information and nuance. So for each of Smokefree Oregon's key messages, we have talking points and more detailed proof points or evidence that we use to make the case for our tobacco prevention work. For Smokefree Oregon, our talking points for that first key message that I shared are: tobacco companies know that their industry is heavily dependent on addicting kids to tobacco products. They call them replacement smokers, and they know that if people don't start smoking before age 18, they're unlikely to ever start. Another talking point under that first key message is that the tobacco industry uses fruit and candy flavored products, including vapes, that appeal to youth and mask the harsh taste of tobacco, but still get them hooked on nicotine. Studies show that kids have used tobacco started with a flavored product. The tobacco industry markets heavily to kids in the retail environment. And tobacco is still a top killer, taking the lives of more Americans than the AIDS, alcohol, motor vehicles, homicide, illegal drugs, and suicide combined. So those are the talking points that all help to reinforce that very first key message. And I'll read that again. Sorry, I should have done that before I went into the talking points. That first key messages was about the tobacco industry targeting children and teens by selling fruit and candy flavored vapes and other products, and by advertising at children's eye level. So these are talking points that help to reinforce that and add a little bit more nuance and information that supports that and shows that that key message is true. And then for each of those talking points, there are also proof points or evidence points. Sometimes people think of proof points as almost like the data that backs up the talking point, that really points to this being true, that shows statistics or the numbers behind it. So that's what we're going to talk about here with proof points. So for each of the talking points that I just walked through, proof points for that first talking point include tobacco companies aren't just aware of this, they're counting on it. The brain's peak period for developing addiction starts in adolescence, and early exposure to nicotine paves a pathway for future addictions of all kinds. And then for the talking point about studies showing that kids start with flavored products, we have a proof point showing that flavored products such as e-cigarettes, Juul, and Puff bars are the fastest growing tobacco product segments. Many youth today are being introduced to addictive nicotine through e-cigarettes. Then for the key message about the tobacco industry marketing, we have data points that back this up by showing that the Oregon Health Authority's 2019 Tobacco Retail Assessment Report found that 20% of tobacco retailers in Oregon placed tobacco products within a foot of candy or toys. And the Oregon Health Authority's 2019 Tobacco Retail Assessment Report also found that more than 1 in 5 tobacco retailers displayed tobacco advertising at heights of less than 3 feet. Then for our final talking point, this is where we can start to customize our messages based on what's happening in our county or our area or whoever we're talking to and what they care about or what's going to resonate with them more personally. So let's talk a little bit about how to localize talking points. In our guide of talking points, prevention talking points, tobacco prevention talking points of Smokefree Oregon that you'll find on the TPEP portal, you'll see throughout the guide, there are places where we invite you to customize talking points and make them more relevant to your county or community. For the first key message, we suggest adding in local examples to make it relevant to community members. So you could include talking points that provide information about things like the rate of tobacco use, strategies to reduce youth initiation, populations that are most affected by tobacco, recent successes or wins, challenges, solutions, and priorities, and any other relevant local information or data that helps reinforce the urgency and importance of tobacco prevention. So to show kind of what this looks like in situ, I thought I'd pull up the Smokefree Oregon website where we have embedded these talking points, key messages, and proof points into the content. So if you take a look at this Hooking Kids and Young Adults page, you'll see those key messages and talking points showing up throughout. So here, it might be worded differently, but it's still the same key messages about the tobacco industry knows that the younger someone starts to use tobacco, the harder it'll be to quit. Nearly 90% of people who smoke start before they turn 18. Teenagers developing brains are vulnerable to the highly addictive nicotine in tobacco products. The truth is, where you see a young person, tobacco companies see a replacement smoker. Further down, we have more information about how the industry is hooking kids and young adults. Showing how the tobacco industry has shifted its millions of marketing dollars to the power wall displays of products and price promotions right behind the checkout counter. Half of Oregon teens shop in convenience stores at least once a week. So tobacco industry spends about $1 million per hour promoting their products in stores nationwide. And inside those stores, what do they see? Ads and product displayed at a child's eye level or near the candy. So this is just a kind of example of how you can take key messages and talking points and then integrate them into actual content that you're using and putting out either through a web page. This could be in a newsletter, a brochure, other marketing materials, or other content that you're putting out there. I wanted to show how you can actually take those key messages, if you write them out, and then turn them into something that's public facing and contextualized, and actually in kind of more of a narrative format. So before we go on to talk about media advocacy, I wanted to pause and see if there were any questions about key messages, talking points, and proof points that I could answer. Either in the chat or feel free to come off mute. And if there are none, we can move right along.
I shared a talking point that somebody locally in my community has brought up around tobacco prevention with youth is not shaming the parents when trying to break that cycle.
Yep.
So we have a high smoking rate in Lincoln County, and so our kids are seeing it in their own families. So we're trying to be able to address that in a trauma-informed way, if you will, or at least a culture, a narrative that doesn't shame their family members.
That's great.
So.
That's awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Anyone else want to share? Okay. So let's talk about media advocacy. Media advocacy can be a really powerful tool in your tobacco prevention and education toolbox. You can work with the media to gain wider reach for your message or a campaign at no extra cost. And you can build broader awareness and support for effective policy interventions or community-based strategies. It's also really good to know how the media works so you're prepared if a reporter calls you. If you're not doing proactive media advocacy, you still need to know how the media works, because could be a chance that you get a phone call and media is asking you to comment on something, or they need information about a story they're about to run. So that's what we're going to talk about. We have a media advocacy guide that's now up on the TPEP Portal as well. At the end of this, I'll show you exactly where to find it, and everything I'm about to present is included in that guide. So first off, it's always best to collaborate on a pitch or a media opportunity with others who are part of the tobacco prevention or cessation family, so to speak. This can include members of a local tobacco prevention coalition, community members who've taken some action to stand up to the tobacco industry, representatives from a school district who might give perspective on youth tobacco use, parents who could talk about what they're seeing with kids and vaping, people who have quit tobacco and want to encourage others to do so, and more. Getting your message out through the media is more powerful if community allies are helping you tell that story alongside yourself or someone else from the public health department. And they can often speak to certain aspects of the story or angle that you might not be able to as a local government employee. So collaboration is really important for that reason as well. For any type of media, from newspaper article to a TV interview, you need to first think about your story and your approach. The first step in this process is to think about your story's angle. So an angle is really what's going to interest reporters and editors and get them to run your story. Usually it's things like something new, unusual, unexpected, or controversial. Story ideas with a local angle, a lot of times that are indicative of a larger trend. Stories that are timely, either because something just happened or because the story can tie to something bigger that's happening. Story ideas about issues that the outlet's readers, listeners, or viewers really care about. Or a human interest angle, like someone who's experienced firsthand the harms of tobacco and can speak to it in a really engaging way and might have a unique story. Once you've figured out what your compelling angle is, you'll want to figure out which outlet to pitch to reach your intended audiences. So the things that you want to think about when trying to pick your outlet to pitch are, where do your decision makers and influencers go for news and information about your community? Is there a talk radio show the policymakers listen to? Is there an outlet that the audience you're trying to reach on a particular issue tends to go to for finding information? Is there a topic specific outlet you want to pitch to? Maybe your story has a business angle. Think through those types of things. So topic specific and audience specific. Then you're going to want to figure out which reporter is best suited for your story after you've selected your outlet based on sort of those types of things to think through. As I said, if your story is more business focused, you would try to pitch a reporter that covers business. Once you find a potential reporter, it's best to read a few of their stories and, if possible, follow them on social media and get a sense of what they care about and are interested in. Next, oops, sorry, I did not click through as I was speaking. So taking a look at what's their beat, that means the type of stories that they write about. Taking a look at any past stories of a similar topic. Follow on social. And then you'll want to determine your timing or your news hook by identifying an upcoming milestone or event. Might be the release of a new tobacco-related report, a park or building that's chosen to go smoke-free, or a neighboring county that has passed a neighboring county that has passed a related policy that you can point to and show kind of as evidence of what it might look like in your county if you pass a similar policy. And once you've completed those steps, then you're ready to start pitching. And this is where everybody gets nervous, and that is totally okay. I have done a lot of media pitching, and I still get really nervous every time I'm crafting an email or getting ready to call up a reporter or an outlet. It's just doing anything cold calling, cold email pitching is a little bit nerve-wracking. So totally okay. And before I walk through some of these tips and suggestions for pitching, I want to put in a plug for technical assistance. If you'd like help thinking through potential media pitches or angles, or you want to practice doing a pitch or an interview with a reporter, a mock reporter, HipKitip staff are here to help. Liaisons, you can contact your community program liaisons, or you can contact Rebecca. Just reach out with your request and they'll help you and set a meeting, or if it's something that can be done over email, they'll support you in that way. We want to make sure everybody knows that that resource is available, and that we can help you think through these things. You're not just out on your own relying on the guide in this webinar. Okay, so the intention of pitching a story to a reporter is to interest them in a specific topic. Reporters are always looking for a unique angle and the opportunity to break a story So they often prefer individual pitches to a news release that are broadly distributed because they know that every outlet is going to get that same news release and is going to have that same opportunity to run that story or reach out to you and develop a unique story for their outlet. So it's not super unique to them, but a pitch is. Effective media pitching is all about building relationships with reporters in your positions. When you offer reporters quality news stories and you serve as a reliable media source again and again, they become more likely to pick up your story ideas and turn to you when there's a related story that they need a comment on or perspective on. You might consider following them on social media again to get a sense of their interests. You might think about whether people in your community already have a relationship with a reporter or reporters and ask if they wouldn't mind sending the pitch or making an introduction for you. And outside of your pitch, consider sending helpful information to the reporter once in a while about topics related to your area of expertise that you know that they have interest in or write about. And this will help build that relationship and position you as a reliable source that they can turn to for future stories. So when you feel comfortable with your relationship with the reporter, or maybe you haven't been successful in finding a pathway to them, and this is just going to be a cold pitch, regardless, here's what you can do. If you don't already know the reporter well, start with an email pitch and then follow up via a phone pitch. For the email, make your subject line short and provocative. Something like the tobacco industry is targeting ABC communities' children in new ways, but there's a solution. And when you address the body of your email to them, use the reporter's first name. Then you want to write a few compelling sentences in the body of your email and start by expanding on your subject line about the most interesting aspects of your story and explain why it's urgent or timely or connected to something they've written about recently, which is usually my strategy. Then tell the reporter why this story connects to what they've reported about in the past, kind of what I just said. I was skipping ahead a little bit, and why their readers, viewers, or listeners should care or would care. And then end by offering local spokespeople, which could be you yourself, for an interview and ask if they're interested. If you haven't heard back in a day or two, give the reporter you pitched a call. You can often, if you can't find their phone number, you can call the main line of the outlet they work for and ask to be transferred to them. Sometimes I do this, and if they act like they don't know me or like they don't reference the pitch at all when they pick up the phone, I just reference my email and say that I'm following up on it. And if it seems like they haven't read the email yet, or maybe they skipped over it, I then kind of use the email as my pitch outline on the phone. And I just kind of say, oh, well, I emailed you about this and that, and here is what I was thinking, and here's how it connects to your readers. And I saw that you wrote that article recently on this, and this would be a great follow-up piece. So it's kind of like, even though you're doing the first pitch via phone, you've already got like your talking points and kind of your outline because you've written that email. And then they can go back and take a look at the email to reference. All right, so I'd love to hear if there is anybody on this call who's done some media pitching in the past for tobacco prevention or cessation. And if you have, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute to share your experiences or any additional tips or things that you've learned. It's all about kind of sharing the little things that we've picked up along the way. Feel free to just come off mute. I think I heard, is it NATA, North Central Public Health District, has done some media pitching before?
Oh, yeah. So I used to be a reporter and I'm still a reporter on the side. So I still write my own copy and I can get it in my newspaper at will. So I've got a very easy avenue to media access and to earn media because I write it myself.
Nice. Any other like tips or recommendations that you would share out from both being on both sides of this?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of just getting to know the reporter and just kind of making it easy for them because they don't want to have to do like, don't give them a website to look up. It's like, just tell me what I need to know. Okay. So just make it super easy for them. And I know that reporters are writing very short now, so you don't really have a lot of luxury to go into a lot of detail. But what you're describing is pretty brief. And so that's kind of the main nut of it. And I kind of think that I would be more open to a phone call, to be honest. I mean, I think getting, you get a lot of emails and they're going to be from not very, I don't know how much attention a reporter is going to pay to an email. And I think a phone call would be probably more effective and just kind of give them the information that they want in a, without making them look at any additional sources. Those would be my kind of top suggestions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I see in the chat, Danny Crabtree, you used to be a reporter. Any tips that you could share with us?
I started typing it out, but so I used to be a reporter and then I was a desk editor for a while. And you have great tips on here, Olivia. One of the things that I do want to caution is when you mentioned the subject, to me, it felt very clickbaitish. And so anything that comes across or might be considered spam is just going to be brushed over, even if you address them by name. So it is actually essential to treat them like you would any other community partner, get to know them, get to know what they're writing. Make sure that when you are contacting them that you have the basics, the who, what, where, when, why. Why is this important, who this impacts, what it is, if it's an event, where and when things are launching. But I think the personal connections are going to be your best bet because, there's reduced staff, not a lot of space, especially if you're looking at print media. And so they're writing as concise as possible for print media and for online, because a lot of people typically don't read past the first or second paragraph if they get past the headline. So it's essential to get as much information as possible as you can. And I think that's probably my thoughts on it right now.
That's great. I love it. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions either for Danny or Neta? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, or anyone else.
It's pronounced Nita.
Nita, thank you. All right, we can move along then. In the guides that are on the TPEP portal, which I'll show you in 1 second where to find, there are instructions, templates, and examples on other types of media advocacy, specifically on how to write and submit news releases, letters to the editor, and op-eds. The guide also provides guidance on how to land and manage an editorial board meeting. And I'll show you. You can find these if you go to the TPEP portal. And you scroll down to tools and resources. Right now, they are the first 2 items. So if you click, you can then you'll be taken to this page where you can download either a Word version if for the key messages and talking points. That might be helpful if you want to copy and paste and edit into your own content materials, or a PDF version if you prefer that. Same for each, Word and PDF for both guides. And then I also wanted to share with you this new resource that we've created. It's a downloadable media gallery. So oftentimes when pitching stories, if you land a story, usually the media outlet will want to run an image or a few images alongside to help illustrate the copy. And we've noticed that oftentimes those images depict people using tobacco, which can trigger nicotine cravings for viewers. So to try and avoid that, we created this downloadable media gallery, both of images that the Smokefree Oregon brand has taken that are owned by Smokefree Oregon. So we can use them however, as well as stock images that we've purchased specifically for this use. And what you can do is you can share these with the outlet and just kind of send them a quick message and say, hey, you know, we've learned that, or research shows that depicting people who are using tobacco products can trigger cravings, and we try to avoid that. And so we've got some images that if you're open to it, you could use with the story that are still like carrying the messages of the story without showing people actually using tobacco. And so you can go through here and select a few images that would work best with whatever story that you've landed to share with the reporter or the outlet. Or if you'd like to, we have the full zip folder of all of the images that you can download. You can just click this hyperlink here and that'll download to your desktop. So then you can look at them there and select in the future if you land a story. So that resource again is also on the TPEP portal. Right now it's the third item there, or you can always use the search function and just search a few words related to the thing that you're trying to find and it'll pop up. And now I'm trying to find amid all of my many windows. Haha.
Just a
Where my
note on that
presentation
media gallery, just to be clear with everyone, that can only be used for that specific purpose. We know sometimes you have need for photos for other purposes like social media. The licensing agreement does not cover those other uses. So if you have need for photos, we can talk through other ways you can find photos to use for other purposes.
There are some great resources and tools online for free stock photos that you can use. If you just Google, I think, free usable stock images, it'll come up with some different portals and databases that you can check out and search for the type of image that you're looking for. Just make sure to check. It usually says on like the right-hand side alongside the image what you can or can't use the image for. But there are quite a few images that are out there for people to use however they like or for social media specifically. So you can check that out too. Are there any other questions folks have, or any other share outs of examples or stories that you want to share about times you've pitched the media either successfully or unsuccessfully, or how you've integrated your own key messages or localized talking points to your county?
So I'll share that in our public health department. We work with our PIO for our health and human services. So I haven't reached out directly to media, and I'll have that conversation to see if I can develop that or if I have to go through our PIO. I know she's very busy and she has all of those relationships, so that when we have sent information to media, she has been our contact. although my name does go on the press release, so I have had media call me directly. So it'll be interesting to see what the county's communication stance is on where I can go with this. But we do, in our health promotion team for all of our projects, we work really closely with our PIO, and she's been a wealth of resources, you know, and information as well, because she's has these relationships and these connections. And I feel like I'm slightly being given permission to this to encourage that maybe I can do some of it. So we'll see how we can move that forward, because I'd like to do more of it.
Nice. That's great. I'm curious for coordinators who aren't in the Tri-County area, what are the types of media that you usually are looking to land? The types of outlets that you're looking to place a story in?
Sorry, I keep talking.
Yeah.
Of course, we have just a handful of print media, but we will use local newspapers. And then we have found that there are more online local media as well, meaning some organizations that are just primarily their website, Facebook, social media to get stories out. So it's not necessarily print, but it is in the format of print. One gal does coffee with Kira. So we've been able to connect with her and do almost like a webcast podcast for her website and her social media. So we've utilized those. Still using radio. You know, a lot of the folks here at the coast, we're still picking up radio, especially if we're trying to. It depends on the demographic of people that we're trying to reach, right? So our older population has to have it in the newspaper. If it's not in the News Times, then it didn't happen. Whereas trying to use our social media outlets to get our stories, or use other news media, social media to reach. And then we've also tried to be creative about, you know, getting inserts in with our electric bills. So for those people who aren't actively using, there's just a lot of folks that are actively avoiding for their own boundaries consuming news media outlets. So if we can get something in their hand via print, then that's helpful too. So just, I don't know. I'm interested to hear what other folks are doing as well.
Thank you for sharing, Sarah.
Yeah.
Others outside of Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas County, what are the types of outlets that you aim to land stories in for your county? Looks like Emily, you said in Clatsop, you approach local news outlets and local radio stations. What about any challenges that you come up against constantly in your efforts to pitch media? What are some of the biggest issues that you have to overcome or work through to successfully land your story in the way that you want it to be written? Or told, rather. Sarah, I can see you dying to come off mute again.
Well, it's interesting because so far, my experience now, granted, coming in with COVID, there was a period of time that felt like a hiatus. Like, we're not talking about anything but COVID. But now that we're coming back, I have found that the media, when we pitch something, they're just using exactly what we send. Like, they're not changing it, which is fine. And it's not really it's not getting picked up as a story for them to retell. So I'm finding that we really do have to present it in a way that is consumer ready to receive. Because depending on the outlet, they'll even just copy and paste the whole media release, like with for immediate release. You're like, okay.
That's a great point, and actually something that we've been seeing too as kind of a trend by smaller outlets that don't have maybe the staff capacity or the time to work with sources in the ways that they used to, or just, right now during still COVID times, they're still strapped for capacity. It might change and it might go back to being able to work more closely with sources. So that actually in the guide that I was showing you is on the TPEP portal. I might pull something up just to show you and talk about really quickly in regards to media releases, which you were just mentioning. Oftentimes will get copied and pasted, or sections of it will verbatim. So let's see if I can change my screen share effectively. Great. So in the guide, this is what the media advocacy guide looks like. In the news releases section, you'll see that there is an actual kind of template that also has the instructions for each section of the release. So as you're looking through this and maybe using this as a template, and we have an example here too of a fake news release about ABC County. Again, you'll find ABC stands in for a lot of blanks, standing up to the tobacco industry with a flavor ban. It's important to think about, okay, what if this isn't just a news release, like you were just saying, Sarah, but something that actually gets pulled directly from and run as a media story? That's why it's really important in news releases or media releases to include the quotes from the actual spokespeople who you want to feature, because they might not get called up then by the media outlet to follow up for more comment to build an actual unique story around, but that quote might just be copied and pasted and run in a news story. So having good quotes and from a variety of people too. Usually for a news release, we aim 2 minimum. We try and do 3 or 2 different people, usually try and go for 3 different people to really illustrate the story from a few different perspectives through quotes. I think that's an even more important point, knowing that now outlets are probably strapped a little bit more for capacities and running things straight versus getting some additional color commentary from the actual source and fleshing it out into a unique story. All right, well, that's everything that we wanted to present. Any other questions, comments, things that you want to share?
Well, I would just say, as a reporter, when we would get news releases, I don't know if people have gotten away from this, but we would get the driest news releases that we always had to rewrite to make them more consumable. And it sounds like, people are understanding more that whatever you submit to a newspaper, which does have, a third of the reporters that used to, it's going to go in the way you submitted it, because there's just no time to manipulate it. And so if you can just write, pretend you're a reporter and, just write the thing and write it tight and put the good stuff up top, short paragraphs, short sentences, because your example had those are pretty long paragraphs, and you're not going to necessarily see that in a news article, but just kind of put on your reporter hat, pretend you're a reporter, and just write a news story and try to discard the tendency of government press releases to be pretty pedantic and, that kind of thing. So that's what I would suggest. Yeah. If it, I don't know if that's comfortable for people, but.
Yeah, it's a hard balance to strike between being a government entity and putting out information that's for the public that you need to put out details for, and also knowing that this is an item that is also going out for the news media for them to write a story about like straddling that line between making it like really punchy and concise, but also providing enough information, because a lot of times the public are going and looking at news releases that are posted online from the public health department or Oregon Health Authority to read the full information about whatever is the thing or the story or the update that is being shared. So I think that's right. Like just making sure that you're balancing between the two, and it's not too heavily bureaucratic and really dense, but also not too concise that if someone is looking for details and information, that they wouldn't be able to get what they need out of it. So multiple audiences I know that you're balancing for.
And one way around that is, we'd always put a link on the bottom of the story for more information. So you can kind of address it that way. Here's the basics. And if you want to dig further, here is a link.
That's a great strategy. All right, well, as we're coming to a close here, I'd love to ask for future trainings, webinars, digital get-togethers. What other types of convenings about media or communication would be helpful to you? Like, would you like to have Zoom gatherings that are less structured with more time to chat about earned media strategy? Do you want to have maybe a training on a specific topic, like on-camera interviews or something else? Feel free to pop in suggestions in the chat, or if you need time to think, follow up via email, as we will, with a link to this recording, as well as the links to the resources on the TPEP portal, so you can go straight there. But if you know anything off the top of your head, or you've been thinking about something during this session, like, ooh, I want to go deeper into that, I really want to know how to do that better, let us know. Story sharing, awesome.
Yeah, Olivia, I wonder if we could, thank you for this, by the way. I wonder if it would be possible to a little bit less than like the abstract, but like follow almost like a case story, a study of a campaign. Like I know California did Flavors for Kids, and then Oregon has kind of absorbed that, but the importance of a succinct kind of concept, and I don't know, like unpacking sort of what it really looks like and hopefully to the point of it being successful too.
Cool, yeah. So we can look at specific campaigns work, and then how that works, which is kind of different from media advocacy, but you definitely use media advocacy when you're running a campaign. Awesome. Great. Rebecca, any final thoughts that you want to share out before we close?
I think that's it. Just if anyone needs any technical assistance related to earned media, or also anything else related to your communications work plans, or have questions about Smokefree Oregon, please reach out, and we're excited to help.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. And we'll end. I'll play a little bit more John Batiste as folks trickle off, but thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.